Hey gamers, and welcome back to the BARRISTERS Backlog. Something we take for granted today, which wasn't so ubiquitous when video games were introduced, is the ability to save our game data. In fact, prior to the release of The Legend of Zelda on the Nintendo Entertainment System back in 1986, along with its battery-backed game cartridge, the ability to save a game at all was exclusive to home computer games or mandated the use of a password system, such as those present in Metroid and Mega Man. With the release of the Super Nintendo in 1991 and its updated game cartridges, however, using batteries to save a player's game became more popular and, as a result, a gamer's save data began to grow in importance. These blocks of saved code became more than a simple pile of data to the individuals who experienced the adventures saved within its bytes. They were memories, victories won, princesses saved, levels beaten, and friends made. They became almost sacred in a way, and the deletion of another player's save data became sacrosanct. For those of us who collect retro games, specifically those for the SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, or even the DS and 3DS, we routinely come across old save data, forgotten adventures, left behind Pokemon, or journeys cut short. While perusing a player's save in an old GBA game I purchased, I began to ponder the overall importance of save data, how it can become far more than simply a reminder of a player's adventure or their time in the game's world. It can be the last remnants of an old friendship, an all-night play session with pizza, way too many Skittles, and too much Mountain Dew, or even the memory of a close family member who passed away. I say all this as a means to preface a discussion I'd like to have, a discussion about Super Mario RPG and the memories of save data. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars was originally released in North America for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System on May 13, 1996. A brainchild of Shigeru Miyamoto's desire to make a Mario-inspired RPG, and developer Square's hopes to have an RPG sell better in the Western markets, the game would ultimately succeed on both accounts by selling more than 200,000 units within the month of release and eventually becoming the 6th best-selling video game of 1996. In short, the game far exceeded Nintendo, Square's, and even fan expectations. My introduction to the game, however, came a bit different than most. You see, I was far younger during Super Mario RPG's heyday, and my games of choice at the time were the first couple levels of Mega Man X, Pokemon Yellow on my Game Boy, and losing repeatedly to my dad in Killer Instinct. I was not at all interested in any turn-based JRPG that wasn't Pokemon, and I likely didn't even know what a JRPG was. However, during the summer, I would stay at my grandparents' house, where my uncle lived at the time. He was 21, and I thought he was the coolest person I had ever met. So instead of sleeping when I should have been, I would secretly stay up and watch him play video games through a crack in the door. Sometimes it was Super Mario World, other times it was Mario Kart against his girlfriend, but for a long time, it was Super Mario RPG. This was my introduction to the game. I would stay up fixated on the TV, watching him beat enemies, gain new party members, and eventually reach Smithy, the game's final boss. I waited with anticipation night after night for him to beat the hammer-wielding bad guy, but that day never came. He would fail time and time again, until eventually he gave up and moved on to other games. So, Super Mario RPG would be left unbeaten. I would be left on a cliffhanger, and his save data, the memory of his adventure and the playthrough I watched, would be left untouched for almost 30 years. Despite the critical acclaim and sales figures, Super Mario RPG, much like my uncle's save data, would be forgotten by its creators. A sequel would never come, and while the gameplay elements, humor, and other aspects would be used as inspiration for other series such as Paper Mario, the game was left to wallow in fringe obscurity for over 20 years. My uncle's original copy of Super Mario RPG eventually found its way into my game collection. I proudly displayed it alongside my other Nintendo collectibles as a gaming memory I would never forget, and would even sometimes pop the game into my Retron, boot up his save, and try to beat Smithy for him, though I never did succeed. The years passed, the cartridge started to collect dust, and the uncompleted adventure began to be forgotten. That was until 2021. Due to complications from COVID, my uncle passed away on November 12, 2021. I hadn't seen him in a few years, and I felt disconnected from the man I used to admire so much. In fact, the last conversation I had with him was over the phone about switching jobs. He told me that I could do anything if I set my mind to it, but I needed to be prepared to kiss a few asses to get where I wanted to go. That was just his way of motivating me, but I staunchly disagreed, and the call ended on less than stellar terms. So when I heard about his passing, it hit me pretty hard. I didn't have the chance to really say goodbye, apologize to him, or anything like that. He was gone, and the only thing I had left were memories. So after the funeral was over and the grief began to set in, I went back to those memories to reminisce. I went back to his save data in Super Mario RPG. I blew off the dust, hooked up my console, popped in the game, and then, when faced with the start screen, the pixels showcasing his 20-plus-year-old save, our adventure from so many years ago, I just couldn't face it. I cut off the game, put it back on the shelf, and decided to never touch it again. Time moved on, a couple more years passed, and wounds had begun to heal. Life had moved on little by little, and Super Mario RPG, my uncle's save data, and the pain I felt trying to go back to it had become a distant memory. At least it was a distant memory, until the Nintendo Direct, held on June 21st, 2023. You see, during that Direct, a full remake of Super Mario RPG was announced, and will be released exclusively on the Nintendo Switch on November 17, 2023. Developed using the Unity engine by Art Piazza, known for their work on the Dragon Quest ports on the DS and 3DS, the game would feature full 3D graphics, updated character models, a newly arranged soundtrack by composer Yoko Shimomura, a new battle mechanic, and additional post-game content. After hearing the news, I was both excited and a little nervous. On the one hand, I would be able to play through an updated version of Super Mario RPG, an SNES classic and a game that I had been unable to beat since I was a child. On the other hand, I would have to come face to face with those once happy memories of watching my uncle play the game, all the while his unfinished save data continued to haunt me on my shelf. I was apprehensive, but I still purchased the game on release day, popped it into my Switch, and began to play. The worry of grief overtaking my playthrough quickly subsided as the stunning new visuals, classic engaging gameplay, and timeless humor of the game permeated my less than 15-hour playthrough. Eventually, as I neared the end of the game, I once again stepped foot into Smithy's lair and began to do battle with him one more time. Some well-timed attacks, a few rounds of healing magic, and some shots from Gino's cannon later, Smithy was finally defeated. The Mushroom Kingdom was once again saved, and after more than 2 decades, I had finally beaten Super Mario RPG. As the credits rolled and Mario and his friends rode a parade through the streets of the Mushroom Kingdom, I glanced over to my gaming shelf. I locked eyes with that old SNES cartridge and smiled. We beat him, Uncle. We finally beat him. Once again, thanks for watching, gamers. I hope this story helped you realize how important a few simple lines of code can be. How they are more than simply bytes of data, but are instead encapsulated memories that tell more than the story of a game, but sometimes they tell a story about life. If you have save data you refuse to delete, or save data that's simply more than code to you, let me know about it in the comments. I want to hear about it. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video for more content like this from the BARRISTERS Backlog. And until next time, keep gaming.